We have a whole series of gone fishing stencils, but today we're doing something different. So I've carved a lot of these gone fishing stencils, the bass a lot, and I've carved this one musky a few times, but today I wanted to do something really different. We got a bunch of teak from our friends Rod and Angie Hall out of Washington, and we want to really do some special stuff with this. So today I wanted to integrate not only the teak, but the carving, power carving, and color, and kind of integrate it all in this. So let's get started.
This teak carves great. Now, a lot of people ask, like, have we carved Wenge or carved this or carved that? And Dad's carved so many different types of wood over the years. I don't obviously have quite as many under my belt, but teak is quickly turning into one of my favorites. Now, anytime you have a laminated board, you're going to have different grains for each board that's put together. And most of it carves really well. Some of it gets a little bit grainy, but all in all, teak is a really good board to carve. Dad started out with a profile bit at just about 1/8 of an inch for these teeth. Now, he could have done it with the carving liner, but that was a little bit unnecessary because there's plenty of room in between the teeth. So he makes sure to get these done first because these are the first thing that will chip out just because they're so small. Now, we didn't show the depths of the bit that we were using because there were several times Dad changed the depth based on what he was carving. When we show our depths, that's more of a generalization. It's going to be different for everybody depending on how new your router bit is, what you're carving, all that different kind of stuff. So it's a good idea, like, get your basic depth down if you're going to go at 1/8 or 3/16, and then carve a little bit. If that doesn't look right, then change it to where it looks right. Probably the coolest thing about what we do is the fact that even though we have a stencil to go by, you can do whatever you want with it. You can carve it inset, you can carve it outset. You can power carve around it like Dad's doing today, or you can do it on a live edge. Guys, sometimes we get so wrapped up in what we're carving that we forget to be creative. It's just like, here's the lines, I'm going to carve those, and that's it. Don't forget, guys, to be creative. And in fact, that's one of the reasons we enjoy doing the sign carvers of the day so much, because there's so many people out there that are making amazing stuff. And there's a lot of times where Dad and I will see something and be like, dude, I never thought of that. We should try that. So be sure to check out the sign carvers of the day to get a little bit of inspiration, to get those creative juices flowing, and don't just get stuck in one style or one type of carving. Open your mind up a little bit and try new stuff. That's what it's all about. So the letters G-O-N-E, that whole word is supposed to look kind of like rippling water here, and it does. And there's some pretty small lines, so you have a couple of different options. Option number one, you can follow the lines exact with the carving liner, then come back with a profile bit and make the lines bigger. Option number two, which is what Dad chose, is he just didn't carve some of the lines, or he kind of cheated some one way or the other. It's all artwork here. So I know normally we say when it comes to artwork, you have wiggle room. It doesn't have to be exact, but with fonts, you want it to be exact. This is kind of a mixture of both. Even though it's going to say gone, it's abstract, if you will. That's the best way I can describe it. So you don't have to carve all the lines exact. Now Dad's got all the initial carving, so he's dropping that profile bit down to 1/4 of an inch deep, and he's going to go in and widen up all those lines. In fact, a lot of the lines on the muskie itself just end up carving out. So there's really not a whole lot to do with a 90-degree bit except for the font and the inside of the mouth of the muskie. The last bit Dad's using is the 90 degree at about 3/16 to 1/4 of an inch deep to go in and get rid of all of the extra wood and also give it a really cool looking texture. Now, because Dad's going to power carve the outside of this stencil, the thing about that is you have to give yourself a lot of room because that disc can be kind of hard to control. So what he's doing is he's using the 1/4 inch spiral upcut bit, and he's going to go around the entire stencil and he's going to make a really wide line. And the reason for that is he's going to actually carve up to that line with the cuts all discs. And again, that can be a little tricky. So if you're doing something like this and you're doing it for a customer or something, definitely do some practice first because it takes a little bit of practice to get a hand with that power carving disc or dish, however they say it. Because what we're doing is inset, so like the letters are going to be blue and everything else is going to be black, you have to get pretty good with your taping. You just want to make sure that you tape only what you don't want to be a certain color. Like in this case, Dad's going to spray black first, so he's taping off everything that's going to be blue. But you want to be careful not to have that tape overlap into anything that's supposed to be black, because if it's covering it, it's going to turn out really weird, and touching up inset painting can be a real pain. Now that the black's dry, which one of the reason I love the primer is because it dries so fast, he's going to tape off all of the black and make sure that he gets everything so there's no overspray, and he's going to spray the blue. Remember, if you're going to use different colors, as long as it's matte or flat finish, it's not a problem. If you try to use satin, gloss, or semi-gloss, it's just going to bleed. And this stuff does take a lot longer to dry. This took maybe 10 to 15 minutes. And it also does tend to gum up the discs a little bit more than just the primer. So now that everything's dry, Dad's using a 60 grit disc, because this is hardwood, for the initial sand. And then he's going to use a 120 grit disc to do the final sand on it. Now, he didn't have to sand it off at this point because he's going to power carve everything around it. But if you sand off when you have more of a flat surface, it just makes it a little bit easier. This is the Kutzall Extreme Coarse disc, and this thing takes wood away like nobody's business. So it's a lot of fun to use. However, it is a bit dangerous. You can see that Dad's wearing gloves, he's wearing a face mask, and he's wearing an apron. In fact, Dad has a scar on one of his hands just from changing this thing out and switching to a different disc. So make sure you take all the precautions necessary. And he's basically just going to cut everything away from the actual carving itself, and that's where he's going up to that nice fat line that he made with the spiral upcut bit. It gets a couple tight spots in there, but all in all, this thing works great. Now he's actually switching to one we haven't used before, which is this is the Extreme Fine, and it kind of takes away the swirl marks that that other disc makes. And this thing cuts a lot too. It really takes out wood fast, so don't let it fool you. Even though it's a fine coarse disc, man, it can take off some wood and some skin, so be careful. We wanted the bobber red, but we used those acrylic markers, and I don't like this red. Dad didn't like it either. So we did do it with this way. We thought maybe the finish would make it pop a little bit more, but it didn't. So Dad actually ended up sanding this red off and just using a bright red Sharpie, and it looks a lot better. Then you throw some clear coat on there, and man, this teak just looks awesome. It has such a cool grain, and it has a lot of depth to it. I freaking love working with this teak, especially when you get 8 to 10 coats on there and really let it build up.
There it is, folks. I am super happy with the way this thing came out. I had a vision in my mind of doing the power carving on the teak with the colors, and it kind of even blew my vision out of the water. I really love the way this thing came out. So anytime I can do power carving, which you guys know I love, and also add color to your signs, man, it just is something definitely special. So I hope you guys enjoyed this. If you have any questions, email me, eric@makeawoodsign.com. And don't forget, we got all kinds of hundreds, if not thousands, of supplies over at our website, makeawoodsign.com. Go check it out.